His brother's 18.
Thank you all for, this has been a pretty exciting day with a lot of, some surprises and saying some important goodbyes. And so it's been great. It's been a very good day and a lot of business. We did have one person who got here slightly late and wanted to make sure he got a chance to speak. And we haven't quite adjourned our regular meeting anyway, so I'd like to call on Jason Lasesi to come up and speak for 3 minutes. And Mr. Lasesi, if you'll just give us your name and address, and the floor is yours.
I'll give him a minute.
And if I mispronounced your name, you can correct it.
That's okay, sir. It's Jason Legess with 775 West End Boulevard. Thank you all for the opportunity to speak and address the commissioners here today. I'm representing the YMCA of Northwest North Carolina and our application for ARPA funds for the YMCA Reach Center. I am here today in representation of our campaign committee, which includes Ms. Sue Henderson, Mr. John Davis, Chancellor Elwood Robinson, and our chair folks, Ms. Sylvia Overby and Mr. David Hinton. The Reach Center stands for Resources for Economic Development, Academics, and Community Health. And it's our chance as a community to formatively change how we serve in East Winston. The Reach Center is a community collaborative resource facility where different organizations, and you heard from Mr. Stevenson and Mr. McLean today, coincidentally, they were here the same day I was, where we bring community organizations into the Reach Center to provide vital services to the residents of East Winston. We are actually currently offering programs, as you've heard. We have youth development programs that serve our elementary and K-5 students in before and after school and summer programs. We have our YMCA Achievers program serving minority high school students from across Forsyth County, helping provide them with opportunities for post-secondary growth. We're providing, and with that, we're partnering with, again, Guide, My Brother's Second Chance, Winston-Salem Forsyth County School, among some of those. We provide workforce development and life skill trainings. The YMCA has a literacy program that helps prepare folks for the workforce. We're going to be partnering with Goodwill to provide additional career services inside of the Reach Center. And then we're focusing on community integrated health. How can we address health disparity in East Winston? How can we help folks live a healthier, happier, and more complete lifestyle by connecting them to the resources that are already existing in our community? So I'm here today really asking you all to consider our application for the YMCA Reach Center to improve this facility. It's a 55,000 square foot facility that has incredible potential to provide community classrooms, shared office space, and a variety of collaborative resources from anything from, as we mentioned, in education to workforce development and community health. And so I thank you all for the opportunity today to let me address you, even though I was a little tardy. I do apologize there, and look forward to the opportunity to work with you to continue to serve this vulnerable section of our community. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to ask our county attorney, just do we need to adjourn and then we can recall to order for the briefing?
Yes, sir.
All right. I'd like to have a motion that we adjourn this meeting and we'll immediately return as a briefing. Motion, please.
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second? Second by Commissioner Elamine. Commissioner Plyler made the motion. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All right, good. Thank you. You can call us to order, Mr. Chairman.
Forsyth County Board of Commissioners is officially back in session. Do we have any remarks, Mr. Vice Chairman or County Manager?
Well, we are actually ready to have our first briefing for the January 6th meeting, and we have no discussion items. And this will be our only briefing before January the 6th. Obviously, if there are some questions asked today, they can be answered on January 6th. And if anyone were uncomfortable at that time, they could be postponed unless it was of some emergency matter, which I do not. Having looked over the agenda, I don't think there's an emergency matter here. But in any case, I'd like to turn the meeting over to County Manager Watts to prepare us and go through the January 6th briefing agenda.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman, and I appreciate you sort of setting the stage for what we have to do today. We do not have any closed session items either, so but we do have a fairly lengthy agenda, and it's lengthy, and there's just a lot of business coming before the board, and we've frankly put it together pretty quickly, and so as we have changes that we need to get into January 6th, we'll make sure and email everybody, send the information out so that you will have read any modifications we have before we come into that meeting on the 6th. So I'll go ahead and dive into it. The first item is a public hearing to consider the submission of an application to North Carolina Department of Commerce Rural Economic Development Division grant to apply for and accept if awarded a rural building reuse grant to support the expansion of U.S. industrial piping. I'll turn it over to Kyle Haney.
Good afternoon. This item actually was withdrawn. It came in a little bit late today, but
Boom.
this item's scratched.
Thank you. All right, it's getting smaller.
Good report, Kyle.
Yeah, that's right. Item 2 is resolution adopting and establishing rules of procedure for Forsyth County Board of Commissioners meeting. Those are we've had a number of discussions over months. That was a summary of the kind of the operating rules that we operate under. We kind of codified it. Mr. County Attorney, you have anything to add to that?
No, I think Vice Chairman Martin has discussed this, and he may have some comments on it. It, by and large, it formalizes what this board has already been doing. There are some exceptions to the 2 briefing rule, which are laid out toward the end of that on the 2nd page, and I'll certainly I'm happy to talk about that if anybody would like, or Vice Chairman Martin may want to discuss the item.
Yeah, it's essentially, thank you for that. It's essentially puts all of our business, so if the public wanted to read it, they could read it. I mean, they could read, this is how we do business, this is the process, and make that part perfectly clear. And then it does make it clear about not adding non-emergency items to a actual action meeting. And then it has a couple exceptions that deal with in second briefing. So it's pretty straightforward, and I appreciate Gordon's help in making that happen.
I have a comment. Gordon, is there anything in this that prohibits a suspension of the rules by majority vote?
No, there's not. And one of the, there are sometimes there's an emergency where you need to bring something up, and so it may be voted on, particularly a grant or something financial, which needs to be done in one meeting. But obviously, a majority could suspend these rules if they want. If there's, as the Vice Chairman indicated, typically a non-emergency item would need to be briefed twice. However, a majority of the board could bring that forward with just one briefing and then the meeting, but it could not be brought forward, a non-emergency item, at the meeting if there had not been prior briefing. But you are correct that the board could suspend the rules if they wish.
And I'm assuming a suspension of the rules is a kind of a Robert's Rules issue. I mean, that's a part of the Robert's Rules of Order, suspension of rules. Yep. But I guess I could offer one thing. If there was a desire, I mean, part of the whole purpose that drove this, I think, is having something come up that at the last moment without any preparation during a regular meeting. And if I am not mistaken, I think you could add to this that the rules could be suspended, but we could also require a 5-vote majority to do that. That could be something else we could add if we wanted to control that. I think we have the control to do that. I think the intent is clear.
All right. If there are no other questions on that, the agenda item 3 is resolution revising erosion control fees subsequent to the adoption of House Bill 489. That was submitted through planning, but it was really in response to some changes legislatively. And I do not see Aaron here, but I think I just described it. Gordon, do you have any
Mr.
additional?
Manager, we have someone here from planning online.
Okay. And that person is Keith Huff, I bet.
That's correct.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, Vice Chair, members of the Commission, yes, this item is in response to basically House Bill 489 that was passed August 30th of this year. Basically, it had various building code reforms and in addition to regulatory reforms, and some of which hit to our city-county erosion control fees, more specifically to the residential side of those fees. And the action you have here for consideration is truing up those fees in accordance with House Bill 489. And basically, it's parsing out the single-family residential component where House Bill 489 restricts the fee, the ceiling cap, to $100 per developed lot of a certain threshold, i.e. an acre or less. So basically, the language you have before you was developed with staff and the Home Builders and Realtors Association, and basically is our best stab at keeping the things the way that the development community wanted, but yet porting with House Bill 489. So happy to entertain any questions you might have.
Yes, I have a question. Does this have any impact? I think there was a bill passed that allowed cities to use stormwater funds on private property. Does this have any impact on that, or do I have that wrong?
That's different legislation, if I'm correct. This was more regulatory form on the delegated erosion and sedimentation control programs there.
If cities are allowed to use stormwater funds on private property, would that private property have to be within the city limits? And I'm asking this because we got some letters from some folks that are just outside of Clemens, whose creek apparently is impacted by development in Clemens, and they're concerned that their yard is going into a creek. Can this?
Yeah. To answer your question, sir, basically for the cities, we have a cost share program commonly referred to as the 70-30. And basically it allows the city to pay up to 70% of a qualifying stormwater and or drainage issue, with stream bank erosion being one of those qualifying factors. But in that 70-30 program and policy, it has to be within the municipal limits of the city of Winston-Salem.
And I assume the same would be true for Clemens and others.
Clemens does not have a program, to my knowledge, of this type.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions on that? All right. Agenda item 4, approval of minutes of the meeting we just had, so those will be forthcoming. We have got a number of budget and finance items. Item 5 is an amendment to the FY 2022 budget ordinance appropriates additional low-income energy assistance program funding. Liz White, I saw her back there. I'm going to come up and chat about this one. Appreciate Liz's work as the interim DSS director. Hope things are going great.
Commissioners, this is a budget ordinance to increase the amount that we got from the state for the low-income energy assistance program. Our state estimates brought it in at a little over 1.5 million. When we got the final estimates and the state budget was passed, we received 1.9 million as a total. So it's increasing it by about 400,000.
Very good. All right. Any questions on that?
I think I've got the next one too.
Yeah, I was going to say item 6 is also yours. It's an amendment to the Pandemic Response Special Revenue Fund. It appropriates grant funds from U.S. Department of Treasury.
So this is the Emergency Rental Assistance Program. It's ERAP 2. It's the second phase. It was given to the county by the U.S. Treasury, a direct payment to the county. It did a 40% disbursement and then 60%. We've received the 1.9, that is the remaining of the full funds for the Emergency Rental Assistance Program through U.S. Treasury.
Questions? Comments?
I have some, but I'm going to wait till after the first of the year.
All right.
You've been forewarned.
Okay, I'll be back on the 6th.
Okay. Thanks, Liz. Item 7 is an amendment to the 2016 Schools Capital Projects Ordinance that appropriates additional funding for the John F. Kennedy High School renovation projects. Adam Fernbach will review, and Darrell, I believe, is still here if you got any questions on the project.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Vice Chair, Commissioners. Winston-Salem Forsyth County Schools are requesting additional funding of $2,269,002 for the John F. Kennedy High School renovations project. This request is entirely inflation dollars, and after approval of this request, the remaining balance of inflation dollars would be $2,712,526. as Dudley said, I can answer questions, and Darrell's here as well.
Comments or questions?
Could you give us a real quick synopsis of what that project, what's going to be done in that project?
I can give you a real quick one. Darrell can give you a good one. Basically, they are gutting the high school and rebuilding it, and the exterior walls will remain.
And here comes Darrell.
Thank you. Yeah, we're going to enhance the three magnets themes there that are culinary, construction, and hospitality, and rebuilding those CT spaces for it to be in conjunction with the Career Center for the new programs there. Yeah, they were existing programs, we're expanding it, but it's basically going in, and all we're really saving is the outside walls and kind of starting all over.
You know something that would be very helpful on the submissions that we get for projects from the county? Because as I've noticed, it'd be helpful to know two things. One, what the original budget was. This one just tells us how much more it was. I did find it later.
Yeah.
I found the total amount of the bid, which then led me to think about, well, what exactly is in this project? Because it's about a $20 million project in that building. And since I had the history of, we started in 2012 with that, of how it grew to that point, and I remember it was sort of replacing almost everything in there. But it would be helpful if we had those two things, kind of reminder of the scope of the project, and then to actually give us what the budget was and what your bid was, which requires the adjustment.
Okay, I'll send that back over for the next briefing as well.
No, that's good. Well, thank you.
Very good. No other questions on that. Agenda item 8 is an amendment to the 2018 Smith Reynolds Airport Capital Projects Ordinance. It transfers funds from TAXIWay Quebec to TAXIWay Alpha. Christopher Ong in Budget and Management will review this.
Good afternoon. Just to sort of make this brief, I know I sort of wrote that up kind of long-winded in your agenda abstract, but this item amends the 2018 Smith Reynolds Airport CPO. It essentially just reduces the project budget that's set aside for TAXIWay Quebec and appropriates $15,000 in revenues and expenditures for the TAXIWay Alpha project. That leaves a balance of $1.3 million in TAXIWay Quebec to allow for remaining project expenditures and encumbrances, as well as a reserve contingency. So if you have any questions, I could try to answer them. Mark Davidson will be up later with some contracts as well.
Questions, comments? Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Christopher. Item 9 is an amendment to the FY 2022 budget to appropriate assigned general fund balance to Community Economic Development Department for prior year incentive payments. Kyle Haney.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. So this is really a technical item. Occasionally, at the end of a fiscal year, we haven't been able to make an incentive payment that a company's performed and should receive because of lack of information or some other issue. And so we hold it in reserve, and this is just appropriating it into this year's budget so that we can make those payments.
Comments? Okay.
Thank you. So item 10 has 4 parts, and if I could get Shontell to come up and pull up the presentation for the screen, I'm going to handle part of it, Shontell's going to handle part of it, and then Kyle Wolf's going to handle part of it. And it really deals with something that we've all been reading about and dealing with as we find ourselves in this really unusual period where supply chain issues are a problem and labor shortage is a problem. And so we have been grappling with the labor shortage problem for quite a while, really because we have seen applications go down. We have had to take a pretty deep look at how we treat applicants and you know how we can accelerate responses to applicants and how we can be. We've really had to work to pull the inefficiency out of the system, make that system as efficient as it can be, because we are in an all-out battle for talent in this organization. And you've got a lot of reasons why that is occurring, and I'll if you can pull up that one. It is a whole lot of things, but we know that the COVID world and just where we are, that employee burnout is a big issue. And I think that has made people examine kind of what they do, why they do it, how they do it, and where they do it. We know that in this organization and many organizations, COVID fear is real, and people are making choices about the work that they do. Most of our work we do is directly with people. And so not unlike restaurants and those type service facilities, COVID fear, I think, impacts us a bit more than it impacts maybe some other employers. But that is a real factor out there. We have had lots of retirements in this organization. And if you think about it, in 2006, that was the first year that baby boomers turned 60. The last year baby boomers turned 60 is 2024, so 3 years from now. And we knew, every one of us has been to the conferences where they talk about the browning and graying of America, where, population's getting older, the ratio of worker to retiree is going, is being reduced. And, when this started, we had 20 workers or so per retiree. Now we're down to, it's going to 5. And so you've got the retirement piece of that. The other thing that I think you're seeing that is sort of the opposite of what it was in 2009, 2010, we had a lot of county employees in 2009, 2010 who did not retire because the stock market crashed. Everybody was concerned about their economic viability moving forward. We have the exact opposite problem right now. You got a really strong stock market. People's investments look good. It seems like a good time to kind of, if you're going to retire, go ahead and do that. And so we know that impacts there. Economic growth, we anticipated through this that the economy was going to really get hit. You take all this federal money in, you take you take the way people, one of the things that came up out of COVID, a lot of people started their own business. They kind of rethought things that they were doing. And so the economic growth is actually pulling people out of the job market. You've got changes in the job market around virtual work. That was you really never thought of it that much pre-COVID, but now virtual jobs are real. And, my 27-year-old son is working in Asheville for a company, and he has never actually been to their office ever, and works with people he has never actually met, and it's normal to him. And so you've got a whole bunch of work around that. And then you got just these disruptions in the workplace that have occurred kind of in response to COVID and other. I mean, think about the nursing shortage that we have now. COVID had a huge impact there. And all these disruptions have kind of just affected certain sectors, some more than others, but certainly in the service sector. I mean, we know that sector got impacted. It got impacted back in 2009, 2010 when the economy tanked. You had a lot of construction workers that went off and did something else. When construction picked back up, you couldn't find workers because they had found something else to do. And so trying to lure them back in was difficult. I think we're seeing the same thing right now with restaurant and service workers because they all went and did something else, and the restaurants can't find them. When the phone call comes back, we need you back, they're not available. So you've got those disruptions. And then what you would expect from all of this is that employers respond to the low labor participation rate. What do? Well, you've got to figure out how to responsibly keep your business going, but also entice workers, entice people to come into that. It's been cast out there as the Great Resignation. I was in a meeting yesterday, and it was from somebody who was pretty frustrated about it, and he said, "I don't call it the Great Resignation. That sounds too nice. It's called the Big Quit," is what he called it, and we really are kind of there. And so, we've taken all that and tried to look internally to who we are and what we're doing. And if you look at impacts to the county, 1 in 5 the positions in the county right now are vacant, and we are having a really hard time filling them. There's a 55% decline in applications received since 2017. And then, probably the reason why I am here today and staff are here today is really some vulnerability in some critical areas that, we really don't have a choice but to make sure some folks come to work in certain services, in certain areas. But I would say across the county, when you have staffing issues, the amount of stress that creates for those who are there trying to do the work. So an income maintenance caseworker in DSS, you might say, well, that's an important job, but it's not, it's not riding an ambulance. Well, when you have workers, high vacancy rates in those departments, what you really end up with is just dramatic stress throughout that department, and that starts a snowball that is really hard to try to figure out. And so we are working hard on this. When you look at vulnerability in critical areas, the detention center has 58 vacancies. We have actually, in emergency services, while we did, I think an important action, mid-year last year, which was rare because I've not been in front of you doing that, saying that we need to do something mid-year most of the time. I think I've done it twice or 2 or 3 times in 15 years. But in emergency services, we've been working on that a bit, but the paramedics just aren't out in the marketplace. And so we are really working hard to try to figure out how to enhance that pipeline, and that work's going on, but it's not something you do today and you fix it next week. You do that today and you fix it next year or the next year and a half. So it takes some time. Public health nursing, one of the most kind of remarkable statistics is, y'all took action to put 1 nurse in every school. Well, just because of staffing issues right now, we've got 1 nurse in 4.5 schools. And so we're really not meeting what you asked us to do. And so we pulled together a group. We've been working on this globally, and then we've also been working on this strategically inside the departments. So if you want to go ahead and flip to the next slide. And so we bring to you really 3 recommendations today that we think are essential, and feel like at this point, you wouldn't want to look 3 months down the road at where we think we might be and say we didn't do something. And so we felt strongly and appreciate y'all's input as we've gotten here just in small groups. But I'll turn it over to Shontell.
Thank you, Mr. Manager, and good afternoon, Commissioners. So as the manager stated, we certainly are having significant challenges in staffing, and so we have a few strategies that we would like to propose today. The first one is a night shift differential, and this would benefit permanently assigned 12-hour overnight shift detention staff, EMT, paramedics, and telecommunication staff. And so we know it is challenging to staff night shifts, and we really need to make sure that we are able to make night shifts desirable so that we can get seasoned employees, experienced employees that work both days and nights. This is something that other jurisdictions with 12 hours do as well, and so this will also help us to remain competitive. Our proposal is to provide a $2 per hour shift differential for those who are permanently assigned to 12-hour overnight shifts in those areas. Our next strategy is a pay grade adjustment, and this would be considered as an advancement of any potential FY23 market adjustments. And so our proposal is to increase all pay grade ranges by 5%, and all active employees' salaries would also receive a 5% across the board increase. Again, all active employees would receive a 5% salary increase. We would also propose to move our minimum wage. Currently, our minimum wage in Forsyth County is $9.86 per hour. This action would move us to $10.87, and that's just a step. It's a step in the direction that we know we need to continue going. And when I address the final item, I'll explain what our plan is to address the remaining portion. This pay grade adjustment would also address inflationary impacts early, and it would position us as an employer of choice. We know our staff is feeling the effects of inflation. Inflation has been between 6 to 7%. You go to the gas tanks, you go to the grocery stores, you're feeling it. And so we're hoping that this item would recognize the staffing challenges that we have and put us towards a step to be a little bit more competitive and react to the labor challenges that we're having and, quite frankly, nationwide is having. And then the last item is we're proposing to conduct a more comprehensive classification and compensation study prior to the budget this year. And so currently we use Piedmont Triad Regional Council to conduct our pay analysis. And we really do need a company that is more of a subject matter expert in comp class work. And so the Human Resources Department would be soliciting bids for a company company to provide us with reviewing our compensation policies, our procedures, our philosophy, looking at our market rates, looking at our ranges, because we know that we are going to have to respond differently moving forward. And in that, they would also be looking at our minimum wage. How can we get higher up? We know that a lot of cities, counties, and the state are moving towards $15. Is that something that we want to do? Do we want to move to $13? But those will be decisions that we will bring to the board during our budget cycle for consideration, and we need some time to do a thorough analysis on that. At this time, I'm going to ask our Budget Director, Kyle Wolf, to come up and to provide you with how we can afford these strategies, and then I'll come back to talk about our communication strategy.
Thank you, Shontell. So, good afternoon, Commissioners. We are projecting the total cost for the current year that we're in for FY22. The total cost for the compensation adjustments, the night shift differential, and the more comprehensive comp and class study to be approximately $5.5 million. And you can see the breakout of how we get to that $5.5 million. We've had a significant number of vacancies this year, as you've heard. And so as a result of these vacancies, yes, sir.
A brief question. The 5.5 million, is that for the positions or positions that are filled currently?
Pretty sure the 5.5 is actually, I think that's assuming full employment. I'll double check my numbers, but I'm pretty sure that was the full employment number.
We
So
almost
it could be
always
less.
give you full employment numbers when we do this. So, yeah.
So, okay, so it won't be 5.5.
No.
Right, we believe it'll be less than that.
Thank you.
And so, so due to the significant number of vacancies the county's experienced in the current year, we believe that we've realized about $7.5 million of savings in personal services throughout the first 5 months, actually, of FY22. And so, based on the salary savings that we've already achieved, we think that the cost of this can be covered through those salary savings. The budget ordinance amendment that is attached to the agenda item does increase that amount of salary savings, but it also transfers some funds from contingency in order to cover the estimated cost. The funds from contingency would actually be for the comp and class study as well, and that would be combined with our current contract that we have with PTRC for the comp and class. There will be some savings in that contract. And so that's the implications for FY22, our current year. For next year, again, our annualized projection, assuming full employment, is approximately $6.8 million. And so assuming full employment, again, with fringe, $6.8 million, this will absolutely be a budget driver for FY23. It would reduce the amount of funding available for alternate service levels in FY23. The other thing that I'll say as far as implications from FY22, one of the things, our next agenda item that we'll be discussing is the PAYGO agenda item. And so, a significant portion of PAYGO is driven by salary savings. And so by appropriating some more salary savings in FY22, it could potentially reduce the amount of funds that are available for PAYGO for next year as well. The other thing I'll say is current year sales taxes are strong through the first 3 months, or the first 3 months of actual revenue that we've received through the sales taxes. We're actually, through these first 3 months of actual revenue, we're projecting that we'll come in actually maybe around about $5 million above what we budgeted from sales tax revenue. And we'll have a better picture of that at the winter work session for you in February. But that's really what I was going to discuss. I can answer questions now, or
We'll take them after we finish the last slide.
Thank you, Mr. Wolf. So my last slide is just to talk about our communication plan. We know it's very important to explain to employees exactly what we're doing, why we're doing it. And so we would use different strategies. One would be our supervisor training, which is actually occurring right now. We've been having discussions about our recruitment retention challenges and would certainly explain what we're trying to do here if our board approves it. An email campaign, video messaging, our intranet site as well, which is internal to our staff. And so what would be really important for them to understand is that this is a step towards the FY23 budget. Again, this is an advancement. If there are more recommendations during the budget cycle, then at that time, this board would make that decision. But we would ensure that we clearly articulate to our staff exactly what this action is so that there's, no unreasonable expectations, reasonable expectations that do occur. With that, Mr. Manager, I'll ask you if you have anything else to add before we ask for questions.
Oh, okay. Thank you. I just was going to make mention that we've got folks from the detention center here, Major Whitaker's here, and Chief Deputy Rocky Joyner's here. That part of the recommendation really bubbled up through meetings around strategy that we needed to have around what was driving some of the issues around staffing, particularly at the night shift, and to some extent quality of leadership at night shifts. And if you take a excellent supervisor, that excellent supervisor, if he wants to work days, you don't want to lose them if he gets pushed on nights. And so I believe, and I think Major Whitaker and Chief Deputy would probably echo, after I kind of learned sort of where they were coming from, that this seems to be a pretty aggressive, what we believe is going to be successful. They are getting ready as we speak to move to permanent nights. Did some surveying in the detention center. In those surveys, 90% of the people said they wanted to go permanent nights. And so, of course, 3% wanted to be on nights, but 97% of those wanted to be in days. But they did want to go to permanent shifts, and that has been something, as you know, we bounced back and forth over the years and really struggled with retention through that. And so, I would ask either Chief Deputy or Major Whitaker, if either one of y'all wanted to add anything to that part of this. You're okay? Did I? All right. They're going to be shy. It's just fine. But I think I echoed kind of where they were with this. And then I guess the other thing I would say is, I got it. This is unusual. I've not done this very. We don't bring you mid-year adjustments for salaries. We're in a strange place, and you expect us to make sure we get these jobs filled. And so and we do recognize this is going to have a future budget impact. And I think part of the message to department managers is if we do this, this is going to tighten up where we are when we go into budget in the spring. But, in one hand, in some of my conversations with department managers, when you've got this many vacancies, asking for more positions doesn't make a whole lot of sense either. And so I think we'll see a leaner budget request coming in. So with that, we'll take any questions.
Do you think this will solve the ongoing problem?
I think it's a step in the right direction, and certainly continued work will need to occur, which is why we really want to hire a comp class consultant, but this is a step in the right direction.
Yeah. I think there'll be a moving target for a bit, but this is an opportunity to get out in front of something that if you wait on it, then you're going to be in worse shape, is our gut, I think.
I am sure that y'all have spent a great deal of time on this, and I sort of wish that we had. Is there an opportunity for us to get a little more in depth in this before the appropriations or before our appropriations committee meets? Or we talk about the budget. Is there a chance maybe in January we get a little more in depth? Because I really think it's a big problem. It's all over the county. It's all over the state. And people used to go to work for the government for the security of it all. And have we forgotten about, I don't know. I'd just like to find out maybe a little more in depth so that we're a little bit more educated about what the problems are. 15, 20 minutes in here, I don't think it's going to do it. But I'd like to request, Mr. Chair, that if we, sometime down the road, if you find it appropriate, that we could spend a little more time on this issue. 'Cause
And we do plan, I don't know if it's too late, but we do plan to go into this, this challenge in our winter work session as well.
Yeah, let me make one comment, and I appreciate an opportunity. I was actually talking to Shontell about a behavioral health matter, and actually, we discussed this a little bit, and I expressed some of what you said, Ted, but the more I have thought about it, I've had a little more digestion time, is that for this year, the impact on this budget is minimal. I mean, basically, their salary slippage basically covers the increase. So for this year, the impact is marginal, and as I think the communication strategy is, once we get a new job classification study, you do what you can, and it doesn't guarantee a future. I mean, it's not a guarantee that this is built in forever. The 5% will be built in forever, but the 5% would not be an unusual increase for next year, for example. So I feel like from a safety valve standpoint, for future years, I think it's okay, and I think, and there's no question what the crisis is, and it's not going to fix overnight. So there'll continue to be salary slippage even into next year. So I think there's some opportunities to work on that, and we need more information. We're getting, this study is over 3 times what we normally pay for job classifications and salary market rate studies, and I think this will be a very different look, and I think it's important. So. After thinking about it for a while, on January 6th, I'm good for this. But there's still much work to be done, and I had to sort of convince myself that this was not building in some nightmare for the future, and I don't think it is. And I think the salary differentials for night work is something that bubbled up from staff. I had just a sidebar conversation with Dudley about that. So I think that is a positive thing to take a look at it too, and it's consistent across our, the folks that do this work elsewhere. So I'm good. I have to speak at Bob Feikema's retirement reception. I'm going to go ahead and leave a little early, but appreciate that, and I will see you all tomorrow.
Good luck.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, ma'am.
I guess serving on the Health and Human Services Board has enlightened me even more to how critical it is that we do something. Public health reaches so many people. The nursing shortage is so troubling. Detention, Lord knows, we have to do something to keep some detention officers. And EMS, what would we do if our citizens could not call 911 and get a response? So I support this. As Shontell says, we have to try something, and I think this is the right step to start helping our folks to come back to work.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Very quickly. I want to applaud Shontell for the work she put into this. When I hear that we're 20% short of staff across the whole county, to me, that's a very red alarm, which requires some action and some planning. This is an effort in that direction. So to me, it's an absolute necessity. When would you like to pay these people this money?
So we would like at the beginning, the first pay period or the second pay period in January. So soon, January.
Okay. If I'm not here in January, I support this effort. That is January 6th specifically.
Thank you.
Let's hope you are.
It will take us a bit to administer, if you vote on it on January 6th.
We're ready.
Okay.
That's our first meeting in January.
And I do want to publicly thank our Human Resources Director, Shannon Hutchins, who really has been integral in this as well.
Good, thank you. January 6th is our first meeting, isn't it, after this meeting?
It is, yeah.
Yeah.
It is.
Commissioner Tonya?
Yes.
Yes, sir. Thank you. I wanted to say, Shontell and the staff, thank you so very much. This is where my heart is with the county staff, to say thank you for being forward thinkers and trusting yourselves through this process. I do want to support this as well, but I do have questions also with regards to the recruitment strategies, media, newspaper, like what does that look like? And I'm sure that you'll be able to tell us during the winter work sessions, but that's something that I need to see. For me, their conversations are different because I hear that you're needing help, but then in some of our, in aspects of some of our community members, they're looking for jobs. So we just need to kind of figure out how we can marry those two together so that we can work through the deficiencies. Secondly, I would also try to look at the root causes, and this is for Shannon, the root causes in terms of staff morale and culture. I think that you may be finding that there's some issues within the departments and the department heads and managers that can help you vet that information out. So that's important to me to be able to support that. Okay, so thank you for allowing me to share it.
And I can respond a little bit. So we do have a marketing strategy. So we actually have a contract right now that recently started with Media Placement Services, which is the same company we've used to push all of our COVID messaging out, which has been everywhere. And so certainly we don't have the same amount of funds as we did for COVID, but we really are trying to push that we are an employer of choice and make sure that our community knows that we really do have jobs available, and we are looking for that. We will also, we do, every 2-year employee surveys. And so I believe we presented that at last year's winter work session, but we certainly have a good pulse on a lot of the other issues that are non-compensation related and are certainly working hard to address that. We want this to be a good work environment. We want employees to want to be here. But I do think, the stress of not having a lot of staff, that is a trickle effect, right? I mean, supervisors are stressed and they're stressing their employees. And so we're hopeful that this strategy is a part of the solution, but we're not ignoring some of the other factors.
Additional information? Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Shontell. Item 11 is actually Kyle's item as well. It is an amendment to the fiscal year 2022 budget ordinance to appropriate unreserved fund balance to establish the 2021 PAYGO capital projects ordinance. There's 5 parts to it, Kyle.
Good afternoon again, Commissioners. And so on the front end, let me apologize for what looks a little complex. So that this agenda item is necessary to establish our 2021 PAYGO CPO. So based on year-end operating results from the prior fiscal year, FY21, there's $14,876,585 that's available for PAYGO. And again, these projects primarily allow the county to avoid issuing debt, or they're for projects that have a positive return on investment or involve economic development. And so the FY22 budget ordinance reflected one project if PAYGO funds were available, and that was for Callidium. And then additional projects that have been identified include the co-located operations with Winston-Salem and Forsyth County Schools that was partially funded last year, or actually last year, and then a potential move for cooperative extension. Pickleball courts was a big topic of discussion during the budget process. There's a master address repository project with Map Forsyth, and then a reserve set aside for inflation contingency for for several of the projects that the county has going on right now, such as the clubhouse at Tanglewood and other projects. So the total cost of all those projects that I just mentioned exceed the amount of funds available from PAYGO. So additional funds were identified in the 2018 First and Chestnut Parking CPO and the 2020 PAYGO CPO. And so that's really what this agenda item is doing. So it's appropriating the funds that were available at the end of FY21 and then moving a significant portion of that into the Callidium CPO, and then amending the 2018 First and Chestnut Parking CPO. There was, I think, around almost $600,000 of savings from that project, and those funds would be transferred to the 2021 PAYGO CPO. And then in the 2020 PAYGO CPO, we had set aside some funds for essentially for debt avoidance for Caladium or the airport, and it was really to kind of have funds available in case there were contracts that needed to be entered into prior to debt being issued. And so those funds haven't been used, and so we're appropriating those funds as well. And so that's basically what this agenda item does. I believe there's a memo, or do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, so at your place, you've got a 2-page memo. And so what this does, it kind of outlines exactly what Kyle just mentioned. That's that $17,890,000 number on the first page. The other thing that we needed to do, and we will continue to do, is remember that as part of last year's budget, there were some special appropriations that folks had asked for. We looked at those, didn't know the rules, still don't know some of the ARPA rules, but we looked at those and said, well, let's push those off to an ARPA process and let's see if they are ARPA eligible. And so we did that, and that in your budget ordinance, we actually listed that. And so the list on the second page of those, I think there's 6 nonprofits there, or 6 organizations there. Those are ones that were not recommended for funding through ARPA. And so this would really be the place if you wanted to, if you meant to fund them as part of the budget process, this is the place to pick those up. Now that we've looked at them and there's some reasons, why, some comments off there. Obviously, ARCA and TROSA both received some substantial state funding, and so we weren't recommending them, and then the other thing you can see in the FY22 request versus the ARPA request, because obviously ARPA had a bigger pot of money, and so a lot of folks had actually increased their ask as part of that. And so, as we move into January 6th, if you wanted to include these in that motion for approval, that would be the time. The other thing I'll say is, as we get through the last 3 or 4 categories of ARPA recommendations in this round 1, then we'll identify those that were like this in these other categories and bring these back to you in an agenda item just to ask you if you want to fund them, because we want to honor that part of that budget process.
Right. So Vice Chairman Martin has already left, but he wanted me to indicate that we wanted to put back Eliza's helping hands, and I'm sure that Commissioner Elamine would like to put back the Triad Cultural Arts. I'm not speaking for you, Commissioner Elamine, but I believe you would say yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
I think the place to do that is, if you want to work with us, we'll get an optional motion together, and we can do that between now and January 6th. So we'll look forward to hearing from you on that. And again, I appreciate the opportunity to say our commitment is to honor what was in that ordinance and make sure that none of these get lost in the. Any other questions for Kyle?
Just to be clear, the column on the left side that says fiscal 22 requests, those were the funds we were looking at in terms of, let me take this off. That's the column we're looking at in terms of consideration for the PAYGO funds. That's the ones in that column.
I would defer to you on that. We're just really showing that in the FY22 budget, those were the amounts that were requested through the special appropriations process versus what they had requested through ARPA. So we're just showing the 2 different amounts, and we can work with you
just
on both of those.
want to be clear.
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you.
Okay, doke.
All right, very good. All right, so we jump into grants next, and I'll get Mark Davidson to get up here. We're trying to get on through these, and I'm going to jump around on the agenda just a little bit so that we can be a little more efficient. Item 12 is a resolution authorizing execution of 2 grant agreements between Forsyth County and the North Carolina Department of Transportation to fund airport planning at Smith Reynolds Airport.
Good afternoon. The FAA has advised that the county must update the airport layout plan, which includes Exhibit A, which is essentially a property inventory map. The exhibit depicts all the property of the airport and requires the county to provide IDs, parcel IDs, a verification of ownership, acreage, and things like that. So the project is eligible for reimbursement from the FAA, and in order to use non-primary entitlement grant funds before they expire, the project was awarded as 2 separate grants. One of the grants is the amount of $16,663 is at 90% with a 10% local match, while the other grant is $10,864 with no local match.
Well, the money certainly seems reasonable, doesn't it?
Yes.
No big deal. Yeah. Additional questions or comments?
All right, very good. Mark, stay there. I'm going to jump to item 17 so we can prevent Mark from having to walk back and forth. It's over in contracts. It's a resolution awarding a contract to Avcon Engineering Planners to provide design and bid service for Taxiway Alpha at Smith Reynolds Airport. And you might want to make a mention just of what Christopher was talking about, that we weren't doing one, now we're doing and all of that. So.
Okay. Taxiway Alpha, this is the full parallel taxiway that's serving runway 1533 at Smith Reynolds Airport. This taxiway is in serious condition, has been identified for replacement. Since the current location, the taxiway does not meet FAA design standards, the taxiway must be relocated, and the county has received permission to move it further southwest from its current location, approximately 118 feet in some sections and 27 feet in the other sections to minimize the impact to the neighbors. If you recall, there was a Taxiway Quebec project, which was on the other side of the runway. We started going down that path, and this mod to standard actually lessens the impact to neighbors. The entire project is estimated to cost over $15 million, which is a lot lower than Taxiway Quebec was, and the NC, DOT, and FAA will provide 90% funding. To complete the project, a number of steps must be taken, including a new contract with Avcon Engineering Planners for design and bidding services at a cost of $818,094. To ensure the cost of the professional services is reasonable, what the NCDOT does is an independent fee estimate, and they approve and propose the fees. They approve the proposed fees in task order 2021-2. Under this task order, there are other special services besides design, which include environmental assessment and public involvement in surveys.
You know more about stuff like this than I do, and Senator and Commissioner Kaplan is on the board, but it sounds to me like you don't have any choice. You got the money, and it needs to be done. There's a safety issue involved. What's the big deal now? We just move forward, right?
Hear, hear.
All right there, Ted?
Question?
Ted seems to say that. I think that works too.
All right. Item 18 is also Mark's. It's a resolution awarding a master service agreement between Forsyth County and Avcon Engineer for airport engineering and planning services.
Okay. Well, the FAA and NCDOT encourages airport operators like the county to have agreements with airport engineers and planning firms based on qualifications and not cost. So in order to prepare an RFQ, the airport staff used directions from the FAA's advisory circular and worked extensively with Darren Redfield in city county purchasing. An RFQ was advertised to the public, and the county received 4 proposals. Based upon the criteria outlined in the RFQ, the evaluation committee unanimously selected Avcon Engineers and Planners. This is a little unique. There's no fees or rates or costs associated with the 5-year master service agreement. And for every future project we have, Avcon would provide proposed fees, and then we would bring it to the county and FAA for approval.
Questions?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, let me make a comment. Mark, thank you for all of this, and I know you guys put in a lot of work, and that airport is turning to be a good success story. In the future, however, is it possible for you to take the current photograph you have of the airport from above, laminate it, and make some for each of us that we could have at our desk? It's the second largest property the county owns, and when you talk about Taxiway Quebec or Taxiway Alpha, it's like, where is it? So maybe you could do that, and that'd be a whole lot easier for us to follow. Needless to say, I know it's a project needs to be done, but from my colleagues, they wouldn't know where it was, I don't believe, unless they fly. So that would be great if you could do that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right, thank you, Mark. Item 13, Ashley Penley is here. She's going to come up. It's a resolution authorizing submission of an application to North Carolina Housing Finance Agency to apply for and accept, if awarded, 2022 Essential Single Family Rehabilitation Loan Pool Program funding. So, Ashley.
A mouthful. Good afternoon. On behalf of the Community and Economic Development Department, I would like to propose a resolution to submit and accept, if awarded, an application to the North Carolina Housing Finance Agency for their 2022 Essential Single Family Rehabilitation Program. If awarded, the initial funding of $162,000 will be used to rehabilitate a minimum of 3 households within the county. That's excluding the city of Winston because they receive their own direct funding from HUD. So eligible households for this program would have to have an annual income under 80% of the area median income and also have a qualifying need. So that would be veteran households, elderly, disabled, or families with children under the age of 6 that have been exposed to a lead-based paint hazard. So once the first 2 rehabilitation projects are complete, the department will submit individual requests to NCHFA to complete additional homes. They have an $11 million loan pool right now, so they have quite a bit of money for us to tap into. And this funding would be utilized over a 3-year period, so that would be July 2022 through June 2025. Also, for each rehabilitation project completed, the department will receive up to $14,000 to offset the cost of salaries, soft costs such as environmental reviews and inspections, lead testing, those types of things, and other administrative expenses. Happy to answer any questions that you guys
Questions,
might
comments?
Just one question. How do you market this to the general public to let them know that it's available to them?
Sure. So we do have our application information online. We do a preliminary screening. We also have flyers that we have taken out to events like at DSS, things like that. A lot of our projects come in through word of mouth. So-and-so's aunt got assisted, and then they tell their sister, and it has spread since then, so.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah.
All right. Agenda item 14 is a resolution approving recommendations related to requests received for consideration of funding through the American Rescue Plan Act for sewer and water infrastructure, workforce development, education attainment, and behavioral health support sub-initiatives. Aisha Carter's here. She's going to go through it fairly quickly. You have seen all of these in briefing sessions, so you've seen these recommendations. So you can give them the fairly high level, Aisha. Yeah.
Yeah, I will try to be brief, promise.
Thank you, Aisha.
So county recommendations for water, sewer, workforce development, education, and behavioral health are as follows. We are recommending that Highway 65 water line extension for $500,000 be approved pending full compliance and readiness assessment. We are recommending for workforce development, nursing workforce development for $500,480,268 be approved pending full compliance and readiness assessment. Also under workforce development, empowered by SiteSource, Gola Community Development Corporation, Project SWAG, and Sinai CDC. We recommend that those be referred to for SiteTech. Greater Winston-Salem Inc. and Winston Neck, we're recommending that those be continued to be evaluated, interviews pending with applicants. Melodic Visions, Sure Staffing and Training Enterprises, TCK Providence Inc., and Triad Progressive Developers. We're recommending that those not be considered at this time. Moving into education, we're recommending that Caladium be approved pending full compliance and readiness assessment for $100,000. Also, the county is recommending that one application related to education attainment for Forsyth County be considered for funding for county PAYGO funds. Also under education, we have Applied Family Services, Beta Box, Big Brothers Big Sister Services, Developing Future Leaders, Happy You Association, Hoops for Life, League Girls of NC, MAM STEM, Project SWAG, and Sports and STEM. We're recommending that those be referred to Winston Forsyth County Schools. And the following, Center for the Study of Economic Mobility, Crosby Scholars, Family Services Child Development Center at the Commons, Winston-Salem Mitzer and YMCA of Northwest North Carolina, Reach Center. We recommend that those continue to be evaluated, interviews pending with applicants. Also, staff is recommending that a portion of one application related to education attainment and Prince Cares be referred to Winston Forsyth County Schools for consideration for the K-12 request, and a portion be continued to be evaluated, interview pending with applicant regarding the capital request and the preschool request. And lastly, under education, we have Bookmark, Sawtooth School of Visual Arts, Twin City Kiwanis Club, and the YMCA Northwest North Carolina request. We recommend that those not be considered at this time. And then we have lastly, the behavioral health category. The county staff is recommending that Family Services, Forsyth County Department of Social Services, Monarch Child Focus ACTT, and Piedmont Triad Regional Council be approved pending full compliance and readiness assessment. The county has recommended that $250,000 in behavioral health and fund be set aside as startup costs for a provider to operate a crisis stabilization home. The county staff is recommending that behavioral health application Monarch Level 3 group home continues to be evaluated, interview pending with applicant, and the following ARCA and TROSA not be considered at this time as they receive significant state funding. And then we have 13 applications, CareNet Counseling, Piedmont Triad, Community Intervention and Educational Services, Criandu, Familias, Felices, Cross North Youth Independent Living Program, Daymart Recovery Services, Inc., Eliza's Helping Hand, Hope Counseling and Consulting Services, Inc., Novant Health, Forsyth Medical Center Foundation, Monarch Behavioral Health, Urgent Care, Smart Start, The Fillings Company, LLC, and United Way of Forsyth County not be recommended at this time as these requests are high risk, lack sustainability plans, do not expand capacity, and or are not currently a need for Forsyth County. That concludes my ARPA resolution, and if there are no questions, Kyle Wolf will present the budget amendment.
I just
Is there
have
any
one
questions?
question, please. Explain to me why we are using these dollars for Novant Health Foundation.
Novant was
Isn't
not
that part
recommended.
of their, pardon me?
The Novant one was not recommended.
Oh, it was not recommended. Oh, I'm sorry, I misunderstood you. Thank you.
Just one
Any other
question.
questions?
One question, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
When we're recommending these to the school system for consideration, are we communicating that to the school system?
Yes. Yes, so they received all of the applications we recommended, and I am following up with the Winston Forsyth County ESSER's coordinator.
Okay.
I mean, technically, this board action does it, but we're doing it in advance.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and I guess the other comment that I'd make is, we know there's going to be a round two, and so that round two, there are cases where we are we're saying no now, but I think in conjunction with you, and I think we'll be at a place where we need to tell organizations to strengthen applications based on what we hear, from this board about what our target, what we want to try to achieve. So,
That being conveyed to them.
probably, well, again, it's chicken and egg. So this board action will do this, and so that's really work that has to be done, I think, when we get where we know we are where you need us to be. So that's.
I mean, I'm gonna look through it, the information, but what did we fund in our qualified census tract? Where are we at our 80%?
Great question, but I will get that information to you. All right. Anything else? No? Okay, all right.
I won't take up too much time. You guys have seen the amendment to it, and so really what the amendment's doing is just allocating those funds that Aisha just really laid out. I will just let you all know that the amounts will change between now and January 6th, because one of the line items is for the sheriff's JIT team, and the full amount is not included on that amendment. It should be a little bit higher. And also the amount for behavioral health is actually a little bit lower. So the number will change by, I don't know, maybe around $500,000 overall. And again, as far as the qualified census tract, we are pretty close to getting a dashboard up where you're going to be able to see it. I think I get to see a demonstration of it next week. And so hopefully we'll have that.
Yeah, as far as the JIT team is concerned, I thought there were some conversations that was supposed to be had with the city of Winston-Salem. So where are we with that?
Yep, I believe they have, is Rain still here?
That recommendation is contingent on you approving some type of an agreement.
That's right.
And so that will come back to you before it's approved.
And what the city has said, the latest I saw was that they would get back to us sometime in January. So as of now, there is no agreement. There's a draft.
So we're working on it, I think is the answer to that, and it will come back to you before the approval's finalized. And then the other thing that I think we need to say, because we have an agenda item that is forthcoming around policies and procedures, and And those policies need to be approved by this board before we cut checks. Is that? Right, so we're sort of racing towards this, you got to get board actions around sort of next steps, and that's why all these approvals are pending compliance and readiness assessment.
Right, and that's helpful. However, Gordon, if you can help us, there was an update in terms of the ARPA funding and what we could do, correct? So my question is that it, are any of these applications being considered with the new recommendations?
I'm not quite sure which recommendations you're referring to, the update.
No worries, I'll find it and send it to you. Thank you.
I had one final question because the hour is late. I was at a fundraiser last night and two people approached me about how are we updating, our process online for them to see what they send and their consideration. And I told them I'm pretty sure we update it on a regular, but I couldn't tell them an exact date. So, Aisha, could you just share with me some information so I can be factual when I respond to those kind of questions? Thank you so much.
So a status update for ARPA is updated every Monday on the ARPA website. Every Monday.
Thank you.
Right. Other questions? Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you.
All right, very good, thank you. All right, if I get James Anderson to come up, he's got a couple of projects to brief you on. He's got item 15, which is a resolution selecting and authorizing a contract with Orsoy Brake Appleyard Architects for the North Liberty Street EDA grant project, and then also a replacement of the train chiller at DSS.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. As Dudley said, this item is to select and award a contract to Orsoy Brake Appleyard Architects for the 4001 North Liberty EDA grant project. They were selected by an RFQ process advertised by City County Purchasing. We received 2 responses to that RFQ, one from Orsoy Brake Appleyard Architects and the other from Walter Robbs and Callahan Pierce Architects. Selection committee comprised of general services and airport staff identified Orsoy Brake Appleyard as the best qualified firm, and staff have negotiated a fee not to exceed $561,029 with Orsoy. That includes basic services of $411,029, and then $150,000 for supplemental services, reimbursable expenses, and an additional services allowance. This represents roughly 7.5% of the $5.5 million construction budget. And the construction funds for this project are coming from an EDA grant. And the scope of the project includes some air handler replacements, waterproofing replacement for some underground parking, and then some work inside the maintenance hangars. And I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Questions or comments? Good job. Thank you.
Okay, and then the second item is a resolution awarding a contract to Professional Air Services for the purchase and installation of a chiller and associated cooling tower at the DSS and Public Health power plant. So the chiller that's there now has reached the end of its useful life. It's had a pretty significant failure, and the repairs are more costly compared to just replacing it. And so City County Purchasing sent a direct notification out to 21 qualified firms, as well as advertised on state and local purchasing websites. We had 6 firms in attendance at the pre-bid, and then we did receive 4 bids on December 2nd. We received a base bid of $339,316 from Professional Air Systems using a carrier chiller. And then we also received a second low bid from them of $396,034 using a train chiller. And the distinction between those two is that the train, they're able to get significantly quicker. And so it is the staff recommendation that we accept the second low bid. That'll save about 50 days on the project, and we estimate that the cost to bring in a rental chiller, should we go with the low bid option, would be in excess of $40,000 a month. So it ends up being the more cost-effective option to go with the second low. And so also included in their bid was an alternate to do a refrigerant evacuation system that is required by code. So the contract amount will total $430,440, and then additionally, the county manager is authorized to sign change orders up to amount not to exceed $50,000. Be glad to answer any questions.
Any questions? By the way, this is Christmas time, They need this stuff, I would think.
Just one question, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Is this a local outfit, Anderson?
They're from Rural Hall.
From Rural Hall?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Any further questions, comments? Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you.
James. All right, I'll get Darren Ziegler to come up. He's going to talk to you about why we need something called an EZ-IO intraosseous vascular device.
How long is it going to take to explain that? That's complicated.
It is, from Teleflex Medical.
It's not near as complicated as it sounds. Well, it's more complicated when Dudley pronounces it. It's intraosseous, which means inside a bone. Basically, this device allows us emergency vascular access to people that primarily have vascular collapse, such as cardiac arrest. So it is a very time-critical, very ethical procedure. The procedure itself has been around over a couple of decades. We started out using this when I was in the field. Really, it started out on infants and pediatrics with a little handheld needle. Through the military, we discovered this works well on adults also. So over the past 15 years, we have evaluated every new device that has come out. And about 10 years ago, a company came out with the EZ-IO, which is like a drill. And this device, basically, they built the proverbial best mousetrap, as you might as well say. It was patented, and that's kind of been our problem. It was patented. So they've got a 10-year protection. I say that we've been using it for about 10 years, and I say that because we've been informed by other vendors that their patent is about to expire, and then other vendors will be coming out with their version of it. But right now, it is a sole source item. To give you an idea, we've used this device 438 times since between January 1st and November 30th, with a 96% first-time success rate with it. So it is very successful. I hate that Dr. Martin left. When he rode with me several months ago, I actually used this device. He watched me put it in and use it on a call. So it's a very good device. It's the best thing out there right now, but it is rather expensive. And we're at the point now where we're getting that borderline of what we can spend, so we need a purchase order, approximately $50,000 to get us to the end of the fiscal year with this device. We're hoping as soon as the patent does expire, it'll be bid just like any other item. If not, I'll see you probably about June asking for one for next fiscal year. I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Any questions or comments? That's a great sales job. You covered a lot of territory.
Well, it's a very good device. Like I said, we use it really multiple times a day.
Thanks.
Just one comment,
Yes,
Mr.
sir.
Chairman. Just want to thank you for my ride-along experience with you on Monday. It was very educational.
I was
learned
very
a
glad
lot.
to have you, and I was getting ready to say when you mentioned Rural Hall a minute ago, I know something new about Rural Hall that I didn't. So you and Joy and I were talking the other day, so that was pretty neat on myself. So
Appreciate it very much.
thank you.
This gets better and better.
All right, thank you, Darren. Item 20, Scott Angel's going to come up and talk to us about vehicles. We know we're in a unique place here. All right.
I can
come on
interject,
up.
Mr. Manager. This is an item where I had a chance to call and either talk to or at least correspond with all the commissioners that because of a supply chain shortage, that we're having to do something a little bit out of order with already having placed the PO, but then we said we would bring this item to you. It's partly a result of this global semiconductor chip shortage, and so they stopped production on vehicles. Then you had a fire in Taiwan, which destroyed a plant that was producing them. Then there was the Texas blizzard, which also slowed it down. And so they're trying to catch up with the semiconductor chips, but the vehicles had stopped being produced because they didn't have chips to finish them. And so we've run into that a little bit now with this acquisition of Chargers and Rams. So Scott and Stephen are going to talk a little bit about that.
Did he tell everything you were going to say?
Not quite. I've got a few things here. So real quick, I'd like to first introduce you all to our fleet manager, Steve Brenniger. He was promoted to fleet manager in July of this year, and prior to his promotion, he served as the fleet supervisor for a number of years. And before that, he had several roles within the fleet division. So altogether, he has more than 26 years of experience with the county. So we're excited to have him as the fleet manager and look forward to the great things he will do in his role. And we appreciate his legwork behind this agenda item, as well as the efforts of the sheriff's office as well.
So this resolution ratifies and awards a contract for the purchase of 17 Dodge Charger police pursuit vehicles and 3 Dodge Ram 1500 trucks for use by the Sheriff's Office. The Chargers will replace current units assigned to patrol deputies, and the trucks will replace units assigned to animal services. The North Carolina Sheriff's Association's bid for each vehicle received from Ilderton Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram is the basis for the proposed contract total amount not to exceed $598,201. The total unit cost for a Charger, including options, is $29,270, and the total unit cost for Ram trucks is, with options, is $33,537. And I will say that we had originally planned to bring this item to you all at the January 20th meeting and have additional bids to go along with the Sheriff's Association bid. But as Damon was referring to, time became an issue. We were actually told in our planning process that we had 2 months to place Charger orders, but there was a lot of uncertainty about that. So in light of the additional meeting that was added at the board's, to the board schedule in January, and a questionable ordering window, and just the general uncertainty of vehicle availability, we changed our plans to add this agenda item to January 6th. And thank goodness we did, because last Thursday we were notified that the ordering window for Chargers would be closing this week. So that prompted our move, as Damon was referring to get informal approval to proceed with ordering the vehicles this week, and then, of course, formal approval at the January 6th meeting. So we thank you for your support of this order. And just one last thing, we did get a statement that Ilderton shared with us from Stellantis, which is the parent company for Dodge now, that said, unfortunately, due to the ongoing industry-wide shortages in semiconductor chips and other critical parts, the 2022 production allocation for government fleet will be extremely limited. And of course, the ordering window was shortened because of that, and they can't take any orders beyond that. So be happy to take any questions you have.
Commissioner
Steve is
Kaplan.
here, as well as Sheriff's Office folks, if you have any questions.
I'm all with you on this deal, but has there ever been a chance where you look at Ford or Chevy or some other brand? I mean, Ford, they must have a lot of pickup trucks because they put them out there at 0%. I don't understand that, but that's what they claim.
Yeah, and I know there's conversations about other models, but my understanding is too, and Steve, you can confirm this, that they're same situation with other manufacturers. So it's not unique to Dodge, it's kind of across the industry.
Okay.
Additional comments? You did well. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. All right, 3 more items, so we're going to do this quick. Mike Anderson's going to come up and talk to us about thinking ahead, about maybe going swimming next summer. And so it's a lifeguard contract at the pool there, and hopefully we'll be back in normal times with all that.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. The item that I am bringing you is a resolution to authorize the execution of an agreement between Forsyth County and Aquatech Pool Management Triad LLC for lifeguard services at the Peter S. Brunstetter Aquatic Center at Tanglewood Park. The amount of the agreement is not to exceed $172,500, and the agreement is for the 2022 operating season with an option to renew for a maximum of 3 years. This past season, Carolina Pool Management was the lifeguard company that we had at the Aquatic Center. They were not able to fully staff the facility last year with lifeguards, resulting in us having to close down part of the pool for the season. We don't have the total revenue loss totals yet because our fiscal year goes all the way into this coming May, but we estimate we lost probably somewhere in the neighborhood of $40,000. Part of the reason for this was the national lifeguard shortage and also the staffing shortages that you've heard some about. So Carolina Pool Management, as a result of the problems they experienced, withdrew their consideration for this contract over those concerns. And this, again, as I mentioned, is part of a national lifeguard shortage, and with a lot of places experiencing the same thing. A number of pools last year, not just because of COVID, but didn't operate because they didn't have lifeguards to operate. As a result, we requested proposals again, received 2 replies, one from Aquatech and one from USA Management. Aquatech scored better with our committee reviewing the proposals, And Aquatech was also lower on the average cost of $18.21 per lifeguard versus USA Management of $20.48. As comparison, we were paying $12.68 for Carolina Pool Management last year. We plan to offset the increase in cost with an adjustment in the fee at the pool of $1 per customer to offset the increased cost of this. Aquatech is based out of Charlotte with offices in Raleigh and Greensboro. Be glad to answer any questions.
Questions or comments? You covered a lot of territory. Thanks.
Thank you, Mike. All right, item 24 is Damon's. It's a resolution authorizing execution of an interlocal agreement consenting to Beeson Crossroads Fire and Rescue Incorporated in the town of Kernersville co-locating fire operation.
Ashley's going to pull up a map. So what this item is Beeson Crossroads, which is one of the volunteer fire departments. So you can kind of see a larger view here of Beeson's is in the orange, and then it's kind of faint on my screen here, but it's kind of a green color, is Kernersville. And so you can see how Beeson Crossroads has been basically eaten up by annexation over the years. And simultaneously, the town is seeking to improve its deployment in the southern part of Kernersville. So if you could zoom in a little bit there, Ashley. So you can see those two stations, 44 and 26. 44 is the town of Kernersville station. 26 is Beeson Crossroads station. And what the proposal is that the deployment in 44 would co-locate in 26, and 44 would basically be abandoned. That's a home. It's not an actual built fire department. It's just a home that they've been using for that purpose. So they're going to actually spend $3.1 million, Kernersville is, to upfit and expand Station 26, that's Beeson Crossroads Station. And then in exchange for that, Beeson Crossroads will give the town of Kernersville a half interest ownership in their station, 26. After that, Beeson's and the town of Kernersville will respond out of Station 26. Each department will respond to its own incidents unless called upon by the other to respond in their different service areas. Once the loan is satisfied, that Kernersville pays off the $3.1 million loan, then Beeson Crossroads will give the town of Kernersville their remaining half interest. So then the town of Kernersville will own the station outright, but Beeson Crossroads will still have the right to operate out of it as long as they're operating fire service, contracting with the county or with the town. So the county interests in this agreement are protected. So in the event that Beeson Crossroads ceases to provide fire protection, the town of Kernersville is agreeing to take on the service districts that Beeson's is doing right now. And then subsequent to that, if the town of Kernersville opted not to provide service, and we work out an agreement with them to serve Beeson's areas, if they opted not to provide the service, then they would revert the firehouse and property bought in part or wholly by tax money, fire tax money, to the county so that we could then carry on the service with another entity or ourselves. The resolution for your consideration today authorizes the volunteer department and the town to proceed under the terms described above, and the county is basically consenting to those terms. I'm glad to answer any questions you have.
Comments or questions?
I'll say this, there's a lot of work's been done over a long period of time to try to figure out how to kind of merge the volunteer system and the public system and the municipalities together through this. And this is a great example of cooperation. Board actually approved it some time ago. There were some sort of fatal flaws in that agreement, and so this is a better agreement and one that I think we can
Speaking from a personal point of view, I'm really glad to see the attitude of the Kernersville community and the county working together. That's a big deal.
It's a good deal. It is. Thank you. Appreciate that. And last item, item 25, Kyle's got a resolution for an interlocal agreement for job link services and some other ones.
Real quick. So you remember, I don't know, back in October, we appropriated some rural operating assistance program funds. And so this item is necessary to approve two interlocal agreements. One is with Winston-Salem Transit Authority for the Elderly and Disabled Transportation Program, the EdTAP program, and the other is with Piedmont Triad Regional Council for the Employment Transportation Assistance Program. Again, both of those are through ROAP. And so this is something we do on a yearly basis. Yeah, that's right.
Questions, comments?
All right, there's a few reports. They're pretty self-explanatory, but we are done and ready to go have a reception to celebrate Commissioner Linville.
Mr. Kaplan has made a motion already to adjourn. I'll second that motion and adjourn.